welcome back to Light Talk, where the paranormal and the supernatural is a part of our everyday lives. So, today we're just going to kick right in. I'm going to introduce, or my guest is going to introduce himself, and I am welcoming him back. So, welcome back, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Hi, Dana. I'm Paul Vecchiet, uh, author. I'm actually a full-time architect with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, a 13-year veteran with the Air Force, and just now I've turned into an author just because things have been happening to me, and I decided that I needed to probably follow this role that I've been given, whether I like it or not. But I am enjoying it. I am enjoying writing. It has been an experience that I think self-improvement is a big deal. I feel accomplished with the quality of the writing that I've been doing. I've learned to be a better writer, and with every book. And so, with the second one, if people like the first one, this one beats that first one in terms of quality and tension, because it is a thriller, paranormal thriller.
Yeah. Can you
And
explain some of those stories that you've experienced
yeah,
in these books? Yeah.
right. So what I do is I write science fiction on the topics that people would normally not read related to nonfiction, on certain aspects of UFOs, extraterrestrials, research on that. So I'm attracting people that would not normally read that kind of book, to, I guess, open up a world to them about things that are happening that they have a bias against, but I present a lot of support why they should reconsider certain things about what is around us and what they cannot see. The first book was introducing how extraterrestrials have an impact on our spirituality, and has always been that way. And the first book could have been a autobiography, because all of the events that happened to the main character happened to me in meditation, out of body experiences, spiritual enlightening, meeting various psychics, telling me about the role that I am supposed to play. All the characters based on real people. So um, it there is a lot of factual information in that first book, even though I have it as a science fiction. And one of the reasons that I have it as science fiction also is because, since I'm still in the military, anything that I write that I would say is nonfiction would have to be reviewed formally by a board in the Department of Defense. So I don't want that to happen. And that's why I do that. Now, the second book, this one that I am about to release, September 16th, it will come out, is called The Disclosure Paradox, Book 2, Salvation. And I had no intention of writing another book after that first one, because I did not have success with it, you know, as I self-published. And it was, it was eye-opening how difficult it is to break into the industry. And I didn't want to dedicate that much time or money to do it again. But what happened, and this is where people need to understand how, if things are supposed to happen, they happen because destiny will make it happen. So in the first book, a former Benedictine monk searched on Google extraterrestrials and spirituality and found that first book, and he liked it, and he friended me, and he told me, you know what's missing from this book? He said, the Shroud of Turin. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting observation. Okay. So he started sending me documents, research papers from all over the world that authenticate the Shroud of Turin. I have over 300 documents from him about every discipline that covers the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. And I started reading, and I thought, this is amazing. I didn't know all this stuff about the Shroud, all the things that make it authentic, not just, about Jesus, but archaeology, art history, forensics, blood science, the linen textile history, and even botany related to the pollens that were found in the Shroud. So I put together an outline. I sent it to him, and he liked it. 6 months later, I wrote the manuscript, sent it to him, and he liked it to the point where he has written the foreword for that novel. And he is a prominent researcher on the Shroud. He's been doing research for over 40 years. He's well known in the circles. If you tell someone who follows the Shroud his name, they know exactly who you're talking about. His name is Joe Marino. So I wrote that book, and I was going to self-publish it just like I did the first one. But what happened was going through the query process, I happened to get a instant message from someone I had no idea who it was. And they asked me if I could let them in a group, which is called Word Journeys, that I had on Facebook. I was a member of it, and later on, someone asked me if I wanted to be an administrator, and I became an administrator. In the course of being an administrator, I was watching for spam and things like that, and inappropriate posts, and I was doing my job as the administrator for that 700-person group about writing. He told me that after I let him in, he told me thank you, and that he was the founder of that group. It turns out that he left the group because he was getting cancer treatment. And this person, Bob Yelling, who passed away in October, prominent author, he wrote memoirs for famous people. One of his books is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame about a lead guitarist for Rod Stewart. And he's written 9 books. Anyway, he said, so he asked me what I was working on. I told him. He asked me to send him my query letter. He looked at it. He made some edits, made some corrections, and then he wanted to see the manuscript because he was interested in what the query letter had. And I sent him the manuscript. He liked it, and he offered to edit for a much lower rate than he normally charges, because he's also an editor. And he did. And then he said that he had a publisher that may be interested in it. So he passed it on to the publisher. And when they found out that I had 2 other books in the series, they wanted to see those 2. And that came about that they offered me the contract for all 3 books. And so we republished the first book, the one that the Benedictine monk, looked for, which is the Disclosure Paradox, which was released in February. And now we're releasing this second one, which has not been released before, but is about to. So you see all the things that had to happen for me to get to this point, me talking to you about this book. Those aren't coincidences. Things happen for a reason.
Yeah, and I believe that. I believe everything happens for a reason. And I believe this everybody that you pass on the streets, everything that happens to you is purposely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So it could be that my role perhaps has to do with what my hypothesis is about this in this book. And my hypothesis about the shroud is related to the blood itself, because they have determined that the blood is not human, that it's close to AB positive. However, forensic scientists will tell you that aged blood, when it ages, it changes and it goes to an AB positive type. So we really don't know what type Jesus had. And the other part is that they're determining that the DNA may be different too. So my hypothesis is, after reading textbook or the New Testament, there are 376 verses in the New Testament that mention the blood of Christ. I don't think that's an accident. I think there's something to it. And I feel that when he said that the blood will wash away the sins of the earth, taken literally, what if we were to have technology to harvest his DNA and repair our own DNA? Remember in the first book, I mentioned our DNA is flawed. It is our original sin, is not what the Bible says. So, what if that is the purpose that he died and left us his blood like that? So, that's what the premise is in the book, that the blood is special. And not only are good people after it, but there are also malevolent beings that are after it as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so do you think most people have this blood?
You mean most people have? No, I don't think so. I think it's unique to whatever species, whatever race Jesus was, because I don't think he was human. I think he was a hybrid. I think that I firmly believe that Mary was artificially inseminated. I don't think it was something magical. I always apply science or logic to things that people call a miracle, or that they just state in the Bible that this happened, just like the book of Ezekiel, where he mentions seeing angels and a vessel. Um, if you look real closely, that is nothing more than a very detailed account from uh, a non-sophisticated witness about high technology.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a guest, and this person here was going on about the Bible being the most paranormal book that's out there. Would you agree?
I think there's some like what we call paranormal, but to me the term paranormal is it's kind of paradoxical, because if it happened, then it's normal, but it's rare. So I don't think there's such a thing as paranormal. I think that is like a like uh, military intelligence. It's like no such thing. So paranormal to me is a flawed term. And I told some people at this symposium, I brought up the question because they're using science to authenticate the shroud and to explain what happened and what caused the image. And so I thought, what are your thoughts as we use science to explain what originally people thought was a miracle? Don't you think that eventually we're going to start because of our knowledge that we're going to wipe away the mysticism, and everything is going to be based on something scientific, regardless of, the event related to either Jesus or God or whatever happened, that there's something logical and not mystic about it. And it it caused it caused quite a discussion, a heated discussion, especially among strong believers. They say, "Well, I will always believe in miracles. No one is going to tell me there's no such thing as a miracle." Well, then you're living in the 15th century.
Yeah, it makes you think a little bit differently about it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't heard it put in that sense that Mary was inseminated, or yeah, um, in that sense. So that kind of puts a little spin on it to possibly rethink, you know, give it another thought,
Yeah.
another angle. Yeah,
Right. Right. Right.
yeah.
Well, do you know what the hypothesis about the image is on the shroud?
I do not.
Uh, you're going to love this. Okay. Um, First of all, I have an entire chapter about all the facts that authenticate the shroud, and that's why Joe Marino wrote the forward, because I was right spot on with all of the research papers that he gave me. It's like a Reader's Digest of those 300 pages of documents. Um, the image was not made by an artist, and the image is different than the blood. The blood on the linen, if you look through a microscope, the blood saturates the linen. It saturates the fibers. If you look through a microscope where the image is, the discoloration is only at the very edge of each fiber. And then when a photographer took a photo of the face, realized that the negative was actually the photo of Jesus. In other words, the image is a negative of his own, you know, his own image. The image on the shroud is actually like a negative, and it's a three-dimensional negative. So the other part is that when they did the carbon dating and they tested, and they found that the part that they cut from the shroud was dated according to the carbon dating in the 13th century. Obviously, everyone's said, "See, I told you, it's a forgery. It's a medieval forgery." Scientists and physicists went back to the drawing board, and they reasoned that, okay, what if that image was done by radiation? They calculated then what uh, how the carbon dating was impacted by the radiation, and they did a chart. And so the part that they took from the shroud is kind of like at Jesus's feet, and they did a graph to show um, what the carbon dating would be at each point. If they took a carbon dating of his torso, the linen would be dated in the 7,800 century, because it was a radiological event that caused that image. And to reproduce that image, we don't have that technology. Scientists in Italy have determined that to reproduce that image, it would take micro lasers calibrated perfectly to make the right depth on the linen, powered by, I think I said 13 trillion watts of energy applied at 1/40,000th of a second. Now, the strongest laser that we have right now is 8 billion watts. So we don't have that technology, and there's no way that we could use a laser 1/40,000th of a second, because any more and you would burn the linen. So this was
Wow.
done with obviously it was not done by human hands, and they explained that, all right, so then the radiological event is what caused his resurrection. So my question is this normal for the species that Jesus was, or was this a special event? And I bet you I would like to actually look into that myself, but I know that there are a lot of people that are not with me on that, that they feel that, since he was the son of God, then it was, again, a miracle that caused that radiological event. I'm thinking that it's possible that that type of entity, perhaps when they pass, is what happens when they pass, is they emit radiation and then they go on into a different realm, but then they're able to come back into our dimension, and then they could go, when they're ready. And obviously, at one time Jesus was ready to leave, and he went back to what, when they say he was his father. But I have a different opinion on that. So
Hmm.
so there's a lot that presents a lot what Christians think, but I have a different angle about it. I don't go as far as saying what they're saying, but there it's obvious that there's something special about the shroud, that there was something special about Jesus himself, and to go further would be conjecture.
So do you think that the other being that Jesus could have been, could that have been like a ghost that came back? Or did this person actually come back?
I
How are
think
you looking at that?
I'm thinking that you know because they're a different race, whoever mixed with the human part of the being, and in whoever inseminated Mary, they probably are more of a light being, that they're able to travel between dimensions, and maybe that part of Jesus was still in him, in his DNA, and allowed him to do that. Now, there is a
So,
book that was taken out of the Bible that my wife told me about. She was reading it. It's called the Book of Thomas, and it was redacted because apparently this was Thomas having conversations with Jesus after resurrection, and Jesus told him a lot of things that the Christians don't like. For instance, there's no heaven, there's no hell, and there's no God. So I think that's why it was taken out of the Bible, because it doesn't fit with their dogma, and it's unfortunate because it would certainly change a lot of people if that was in the Bible.
yeah, I understand there's been a lot of stories that were taken out of the Bible,
Yeah,
probably for the same reasons you would say. Just
yeah.
guessing. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. That's pretty crazy. So, what are some of the other experiences you've had?
Um, well, like I said, the biggest one was just having Joe Marino search me out of nowhere, and then having Bob Yelling search me out of nowhere. I haven't had any meditative experience at all since the ones that I had, a few years ago. Um, it I think it just happens if it's supposed to happen, or if there's an intention. And right now, apparently, there's no need for me to have that kind of experience. So I'm kind of I'm sad about that because those were wonderful experiences, and it's kind of feels interesting to be selected to being allowed to seeing those things that I was seeing. But if that's not necessary anymore, I'll just keep going with the flow, you know?
Yeah, do you feel like it's kind of I know everything happens for a reason. So you've gotten all this information for this book and everything. Um,
Yeah.
do you feel like some of that was given to you by spirit?
When I wrote the outline, um, it was so fluid and it was so easy. Just like I wrote the outline for the first book, where I spent an entire weekend doing 31 pages. I had no problem putting this very complex plot together and tying it into what I had in the first book. So it's very possible that I had some help on that. Yeah, first time writers normally don't have that kind of ease in putting together stories like that.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe this is your route that you need to go right now is to tell the world about what's out there in your own special way. And they're helping you through that by giving you that information and then helping
Yeah,
you write it in that special way.
yeah. I was at the symposium and I met a priest who was he was like a liaison between that shroud research group and the Vatican, and I told him about the book, and I said that the reason I wrote science fiction is because I wanted to attract people who otherwise would not read something about the shroud, to make them think about the shroud being authentic, and because I get a lot of pushback from atheists, and I think if an atheist were to read this book and learn about all the facts about the shroud, they could still be an atheist regarding God, but they need to understand that there was a man or a being named Jesus. There was a reason that he came to earth. It may not necessarily be the reason that the Christians talk about, but there was a reason that aligns with a lot of people's beliefs, and the spiritual part, where I think he was sent as an emissary to try and see if we were ready to be part of the universal community, if we were ready to evolve spiritually. And obviously we failed that test. And all the Christians that say that, oh, he's coming back, there's going to be a second coming. No, I don't believe that, because we failed the first test, and they're not going to send another one just for us to kill him again.
So what do you think at that point if Jesus is not going to return? Do you feel like that this is like an end to earth, or where do you lie with the a new earth? How do you look at that?
I I would like to see, obviously, Christians behave like Christians. You know, um, there's so much hypocrisy in Christianity right now, and they hold up the Bible and they say all these verses and stuff like that, and yet they attack people of color and um, people that love others differently than they do. And I think before we evolve, we need to first, as I talk in the first book, we need to recognize that we have flaws and that we need to address those flaws one by one instead of thinking that there's going to be a great revolution, a great spiritual revolution, that there's going to be a savior, that all of this savior mythology, and even the spiritualists have that version of savior mythology. I think that's flawed. We have to do it on our own. We have free will. We can do it on our own, but we need to start by addressing the hypocrisy and actually putting people back in their place, so that we can work on our own, and by putting them in their place, making them realize uh, the the flaws that we have. And you know a lot of their beliefs are that we are made in the image of God, so we're perfect. And that's such a direction that really masks the truth. And I think that's dangerous. So I don't believe that there's going to be like a spiritual revolution. We have to first go back to square one.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel that we are on our way to that? Because a lot of people are saying that we're on our way to opening up, and um, this change is happening now. And what is your feel on that? That we're going
I
rising
don't
our
know if
vibrations.
I don't know. I think we're like in another like later part of the Dark Ages, unfortunately. And at the end of the Dark Ages, we had a Renaissance, which was all about the the victory of the human spirit and science and knowledge and culture and all that. Um, I think um, we are just before that, and I think once things start to change, uh, and you'll start to see things change. It's starting right now. There's a lot of things that people are opening their eyes and realizing that we've been um, fooled. So I think that um, we need to get out of the dark ages and get into another renaissance, hopefully.
What is your time frame of us possibly getting into that new renaissance?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be in my lifetime. I think it'll be at the end of my lifetime, unfortunately. But without getting into politics, I think there's a lot of things that need to happen before we do that. And there's I could see that there's a swing going on in Europe away from um, right wing, um, you know, um, conservatives and things like that. So maybe it starts there and it comes to our shores eventually.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. But you have such a different spin on everything. It's really interesting how you're putting all of this together with having the paranormal and the Bible being side by side and bringing science into it. It's very interesting. I think it's just how everything is becoming one. I mean, it's not like there's a Bible. Now we're getting like science into it. We're getting paranormal in it, and
Right.
we're getting like everything is kind of like I'm seeing like this ball that's just spinning and is just rotating and becoming one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Originally, when I first started to write the first book, I thought, you know what I need to do, especially with the political situation going on, I need to bridge the gap between science and religion, and and I think that's one of the side effects from what I've done is that I'm bringing both worlds together because each one has some truth in it, and that um, there is common ground somewhere where they could start to build truth and knowledge from.
Yeah. And it's getting so much closer now. I feel that we're just about coming into like a real eye-opening situation with the information coming together and
Mm-hmm.
explaining each other. I think it's very interesting in how that's
Yeah.
working. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So are you planning on a new book?
Actually, the third book will come out in June. It's already written. It was the prequel to the first one. We're just going to make it. We're going to improve it, and then we'll republish it. Um, it's a great story. It's the origins of the main characters, including Katrina, how she got her abilities, and how her father had an impact on her life and her destiny, and what affected him, what caused him to get in that circle of influence. So it's it's not as much uh, like the books that I've written where I'm putting facts out um, and linking it to science fiction. Although there are a lot of facts in the book, and maybe it's more like the first book where first of all, it is based on a real person. She's still alive, and she's the person that I based Katrina on. And when she learned that I wrote about her in the first book, she sent me all kinds of things about her life. And eventually we started to have a good relationship, and we would have chats nightly, and I would record our chats about the things that she did. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to write a story that'll be almost like a biography of you. And she said, that was great. And actually, it was kind of like a very a cleansing experience for her because she was keeping things to herself, and she was almost ashamed of certain things. And when I wrote it and I sent it to her and she read it, she's very thankful about it. So the next time you have me, I think it could be a joint interview between um, with me and her, and you could ask her questions about the things in there too.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah. We'll work on that and see what we can come about. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting to hear her side and all that. Um, were you saying that you had some abilities yourself? You had some things that you were either seeing using some of your clairs? Says you've had some of
The
those?
only thing is only I wouldn't say their abilities. They're just that like the universe giving me information either through dreams or through meditation. Um, it's not because I have a special ability. It's because I'm being allowed to to know this stuff, or I'm being given this stuff so that I use it in my role. You know, it's not that I have something and that I can control it. It's certainly not in my control.
That's pretty cool. So do you, that's that's really cool. I mean, in your dreams, do you get it like in like a story time, or is it like in symbols? Um, how does it come through in dreams?
I think for dreams, it comes very vividly and repeatedly. You know, the messages are repeat until I write it down, and when I write it down, then I don't have that dream anymore. So it's kind of um, it's very much like one of the characters in my first book where he was having headaches, and he had contact with a craft, and the craft downloaded stuff in his brain and didn't know it, and he had a headache, and he just started writing binary code in a book. And when he wrote all of that 17 pages in a notebook, then the headache was gone and that memory is gone, but he had that code, and he was able to use that code later on in when he met a scientist that knew binary code, and they decoded it. So I think you know if you have a dream or a memory, and it's important for anyone when they have dreams, keep a journal next to you, and the next morning, if you remember it, write down whatever you have, even however weird it is, because I'm telling you that I could get some really weird dreams. But um, it's kind of like downloading information and making more space for more information later on.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. I haven't had anything like that, but yeah, I do have a lot of dreams. And I do journal the dreams. A lot of times I'll have the dream and then wake up right away.
Yeah,
So I'm able
right.
to get it written down and everything. And then I'm back to sleep. But yeah, I've had some kind of interesting ones here lately, but it's it's kind of interesting. Not sure exactly what these ones are meaning or signifying, but they're they're kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah. So how did you realize that this is going to go into a book? I mean, because they were telling you and everything, but I mean, can you kind of explain that stepping of how you went from the dreams into the book?
Well, it was a very fluid kind of process where um, I I took the information that Joe sent me, and I wrote down the facts, and I would do research, and I would uh, do research online, because there are so many uh, channels, YouTube channels of researchers that put out stuff every day about the shroud. And I'm also a member of a couple of groups that invited me after they met me at the symposium. But it was it's so hard to explain, except that it was so natural that it came to me, and that there were things that were left open in the first book, and it tied in so perfectly with the story in the second book. And I just like, it was almost as if my mind had the story for the second book already set up, just waiting for me to write it. You know what I mean? It's just like about the DNA, the blood, which is the biggest part that that I present, because the point is that the person that gets murdered was murdered saving the blood of Christ. And so, I mean, that's a common theme in the book, that Mary Ellen goes into a trance after seeing a news story about the shroud being revealed in Turin during Easter. And so she goes into a trance and meditation, and she's allowed to see the shroud. And then she gets closer, and she's not getting closer, it's actually magnifying. So she's seeing the wounds, and then the wounds become the blood, and then it gets magnified, and she sees the cells, and then the chromosomes, and then finally the DNA. And she gets out of it, and she wonders why in the world was she allowed to see this? And she just keeps it in the back of my mind until things happen where Katrina tells her that Robert's involved in an investigation in Rome about the shroud, and things start clicking finally. So, I mean, there's a lot that really flows well with the first book in this book. And I have a prologue in case people haven't read the first book. The prologue gives them information on what was important in the first book that ties into the second book. So I'm generous about that.
Wow, that's really cool. Um, so where can people find your books and when they come out, where can they find them? Or do you have that
Yeah,
information yet?
the book will come out September 16th for sure. They could go to my website to pre-order it. And then when it comes out, it'll be available also on Barnes and Noble, Amazon, of course, and most every bookstore will have it in their system. So they could go to their favorite bookstore and they could just ask the person across, over the counter to look it up and to order it for them. They could do that. But an easy way to do it is to do it on my website. I think it's only through Amazon and Barnes and Noble right now, but once it gets released, then there'll be links for all kinds of places, including a place in Canada and a place in UK. So,
Nice,
it,
nice.
but I always encourage people to support their local bookstores.
Okay. All right. So we will get your bio and we'll put
So
that. Go ahead.
you want my website? The website is thedisclosureparadox.com, all one word.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put all your information down in the notes below so that people can get back to that and have all that information for you. So that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I need to get your books and get them read. I'm so behind on all my books. I've got so many books I need to read yet.
I'm reading. Have you heard of a book called? Gosh, I can't even. Urantia. Have you heard about that? The Book of Urantia.
No, I haven't.
3,000 pages, and it's supposedly. I'm not. I'm not confident on this one, but supposedly it's a compilation of chapters from various mystical entities beyond Earth that give people the true history of Earth and the universe and how things are organized beyond Earth and angels and the angelic realm and all of that, and tying into Jesus. There are some things in there that are missing, and that's what makes me suspect. Uh, so it was probably written by a group of people that had a mission, and um, I don't. First of all, if it was written by all of these mystics, from other worlds, you
Hmm.
would think that their writing styles would be different, but the writing style is consistent. So that's one thing that is a flaw, and the other part is, well, essentially they don't talk about, um, they don't talk about the Exodus, and they don't talk about, if they want to go into history, that they don't talk about, the information from the Hindu Vedas of the floods that happen at the end of the Ice Age, where the world got engulfed by water from the glaciers melting. They don't talk about that. So there's some flaws in there. I'm reading it just out of curiosity, but my goodness, I'm I'm at I think 1,600 pages right now, and I'm kind of I'm scanning in some places because there's some things that I just not too interested about, but um,
Right.
just look it up. And obviously there are, if you go into Goodreads, for example, and read the reviews, you know there are a lot of reviews that are panning it, obviously, and then there are some people that obviously like the message, but I I don't think I don't think it's authentic. It was done in the 50s, I believe. It was written in the 50s.
Interesting. Well, before everything happens, the knowledge of everything, and after um, the first um experience with the ETs and all, like Betty and what was his name?
Oh,
Oh,
Betty and Barney.
Betty and Barney. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. After theirs, so that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put that information down below for anybody that wants to check that out
Okay.
and get some
All
books
right.
from you. And
All
yeah,
right.
thanks for being on the show and explaining some more of this and going through your books, all of them. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
we've only scratched the surface about the book itself, but that's okay because there are so many, you know, uh, what they call spoilers that I'm not talking about. But I did mention some things, but there's a lot more in there that really make for a great story too, though.
Well, there you go, everyone. All
All right.
right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And
Thanks, Dana.
if, absolutely. And by all means, if you and this other lady would like to be on the show, let me know. We'll get you guys on. It'd
Oh,
be
I'm sure
awesome.
she's open to it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll
All
keep
right.
in touch with that. Well, if anyone else
All
out
right.
there would like to tell your paranormal or supernatural stories, get a hold of me at lighttalk423 at gmail.com. And you can have your story on the show too. And we will talk with everybody next time. Bye.